About Cascading Style Sheets, CSS. In the previous chapters you have read and understood that the web pages are the building blocks of a website. Various elements like text, images, audio, video and links are embedded in these web pages. You have also learnt about HTML, which is a popular tool for developing web pages. Using HTML, web pages can be created quickly, but due to the static nature of HTML, the pages are not very engaging and interactive. In this chapter, we will discuss and learn about DHTML, which provides the developer with enhanced control over the web pages so that the pages can be manipulated at any time. It is not only a language but a combination of several features which makes a web page dynamic. Before proceeding further, it is essential to understand the difference between a static and a dynamic web page. Students, let us talk about static web page. Static means unchanged or constant. In static web pages, the contents of the web page remain stationary. These web pages are loaded on the client's browser exactly in the same way as they are stored on the web server. A user can only read the information but cannot make any modifications or interact with the data. Static web pages are created by using only HTML. Now let us talk about dynamic web page. A dynamic web page is generated when a user requests for the page. Each time it shows different content based on the user's interaction. The page that a user views at a time exists only for him and for that very moment. If viewed by someone else at the same time or even by him at a slightly different time, he would get something different. Dynamic web page is also called an interactive web page that is highly functional and ideal for developing large websites. The best example to understand dynamic web page is the online shopping websites. The information displayed on the website is continuously updated according to the user's choices and the latest trends and offers. Similarly, a newspaper's website is also a dynamic website because the content needs to be always up to date. Dynamic web pages can be created by using ASP, PHP or DHTML. Okay students, let us understand what is DHTML. DHTML stands for Dynamic Hypertext Markup Language. It is not a language but instead is a combination of the web development technologies like Static Markup Language (HTML), a client-side scripting language (JavaScript), Styling Language (CSS), and Document Object Model (DOM). This includes specific features pertaining to text effects, style, multimedia, animation, and dynamic menus. DHTML helps in creating dynamic web pages that are interactive, animated, and responsive to the user's actions. Microsoft introduced the application of DHTML with the release of Internet Explorer 4 in 1997. Students, let me tell you about components of DHTML. DHTML is an emerging technology to develop dynamic web pages and consists of the following components. HTML. HTML defines the basic structure of a web page by using the essential elements such as paragraphs, headings, forms, tables, and links. Cascading Style Sheets (CSS). CSS is a set of style sheet design principles that determine the visual layout of the content of a web page. These sheets help in defining and enhancing the page's appearance by controlling the format of HTML elements. It contains a wider range of formatting attributes than HTML. It is like a template in a word processing document. Using CSS, you can set the font, color, background, position, margins, etc. of various elements on a web page. CSS is easy to learn and understand. You do not need to write HTML tag attributes time and again while using CSS. Scripting. This component of DHTML makes a web page dynamic. It provides a way to interpret the user's actions and accordingly brings change to a web page. For example, scripts can interpret the mouse actions such as clicking or entering a value in a text box and respond to that action by using a set of predefined instructions such as opening a page. Although DHTML can communicate with several scripting languages, yet JavaScript is the standard language for creating cross-browser DHTML pages. It uses various scripting techniques to detect the browser that the user is using and accordingly executes the code intended for that browser. Document Object Model (DOM). The DOM defines the logical structure of a web page. It arranges the web page content in a hierarchical way that allows the HTML elements, style, sheets, and scripting languages to interact with each other. It enables the script to modify any HTML element and style sheet setting on the page. It is a way of categorizing and organizing every part of a web page: the basic structure, the head section elements, the body section elements, and the style sheets, if any. The W3C defines the DOM as a platform and language neutral interface that allows programs and scripts to dynamically access and update the content, structure, and style of documents. Students, now let us talk about cascading style sheets. Cascading style sheets is a collection of rules called styles that affect the visual appearance of a web page. While HTML lets you define the structure of a web document, CSS allows you to specify how the structural elements could be displayed. Earlier, HTML was used to structure web documents with basic formatting, which was incorporated using HTML tags such as B or I to mark the specified text as bold or italic. However, with the increasing popularity of the Internet, it became complex for the web designers to add formatting within HTML repeatedly for every single page. Therefore, they started looking for possibilities to add formatting and layouts to the web documents through an altogether different technology. CSS was then introduced by the World Wide Web Consortium W3C to improve the presentation capabilities of web pages. The idea behind CSS was to separate the structural content of a web page from its layout. CSS allows the web designers to specify the web page formatting options through a style sheet while keeping HTML markup considerably simple. Using CSS, you can control the color of the text, the style of fonts, the spacing between paragraphs, size and layout of columns, background images and colors, as well as a variety of other effects. Style sheets were designed to separate the content of a document from its presentation so that the appearance of the text can be changed whenever required without affecting its substance. This makes these sheets easy to maintain and update. Let us consider a scenario. In a web page, there are 5 paragraphs and we want all the sections to be green in color, left aligned and having font as monotype cursive. In this case, using the style sheet, we need to specify the rule just once and it will apply to every instance of the P tag in the document. Advantages of CSS. CSS saves time. You can write CSS once and then attach the same sheet to multiple HTML pages. You can define a style for each HTML element and apply it to as many web pages as you want. This saves time. Pages download faster. If you are using CSS, you are not required to write HTML tag attributes every time. Just write one CSS rule of a tag and apply it to all the occurrences of that tag. So, less code means faster download of the web page. Easy maintenance. To make a global change, you need to make changes in the style sheet and all the elements in all web pages will be updated automatically. Superior styles to HTML. CSS has a much wider array of attributes than HTML, so you can give a far better look to your web page in comparison to HTML attributes. Multiple device compatibility. Style sheets allow the web pages to be optimized for more than one type of devices. Using CSS, the same HTML document can be presented in different viewing styles for different devices, such as desktops, PDAs, and cell phones, etc. Global Web Standards. Various HTML attributes are deprecated nowadays. Therefore, it is recommended to use CSS because CSS designs are flexible and compatible with all the web browsers. Offline browsing. CSS can store web applications locally with the help of offline cache, which ensures faster loading and better overall performance of the website. Using this, you can view the offline websites. Disadvantages of CSS. In spite of being an easy and effective technology to manipulate the aesthetic aspects of a web page, CSS has its limitations, which are as follows. Inconsistent browser support. Different browsers have distinct levels of compliance with CSS. That is, some features are supported while some are not. Therefore, it is a challenge for web developers to check the compatibility of CSS with different browsers before finally launching a website. For example, Internet Explorer and Mozilla Firefox react differently to CSS. Restricted backgrounds per element. With CSS, you cannot specify more than one background images or each element. Lack of variables. As CSS is not designed as a programming language, you cannot define variables, functions, or perform any arithmetic and logical operations in it. When a developer wants to change a fundamental constant, such as the color of an object, its height or width, the developer has to replace everything. Security threat. Since CSS is an open text-based system without any built-in security, anyone having access to the website may deliberately or accidentally alter the links or disrupt formatting. Vertical control limitation. Vertical limitations and column declaration may be problematic. For example, to center an element vertically, developers must write complicated style rules or write simple rules that would be widely supported. Multiple column layouts may also be difficult to implement, and the effect can only be completed by using the floating elements. Students, let us understand what cascading implies. Cascading means the hierarchical order in which different style sheet types are arranged so that the latest style sheet takes the precedence on the earlier ones. In the example given below, the first definition specifying the P color as red precedes the second definition, which defines the blue color for P, and this in turn precedes the third definition, which specifies the green color for P. The definition at the bottom will take precedence and the paragraph will appear in green color. CSS syntax. A CSS comprises of style rules that are interpreted by the browser and then applied to the corresponding elements in your document. A style rule consists of the following parts. Property. It defines how the elements with distinctive style should look on the web page. For example, font family, color, background, border, etc. Value. Values are assigned to properties. For example, the value of font family property can have font names like Monotype, Cursiva, Times New Roman, Arial, etc. The property and its value are joined together by a colon. Declaration. A property and its value are collectively called declaration. For example, color green. A semicolon separates each declaration. Selector. It is the name of the HTML element to which a style is applied. For example, if we want to change the behavior of the HR element, let us say its width should be 50%, then we would use HR as the selector. Rule. A rule is a combination of a selector and declaration. It is enclosed in curly brackets. For example, HR selector, width 50%, body, value, declaration, rule. We can also group the rules together, which are called rule sets. For example, P, HR, color, green. Here we are grouping two different selectors, P and HR, to create two rules. P, font family, monotype, cursiva, color, green. Here we are grouping two different declarations, font family, monotype, cursiva, and color green, to create two rules. CSS is created and maintained by a group of people within W3C called the CSS Working Group. The CSS Working Group creates documents called specifications. Now let me tell you about basic selectors in CSS. The basic structure of a cascading style sheet contains selectors and their attributes. A selector is the name of the HTML element to which a style is applied. By using selectors, different formatting rules are first created within the style sheets and then these rules are implemented on HTML elements. For example, if we want to change the behavior of the H1 element, then we would use H1 as a selector. The following section describes the various types of selectors used in CSS. Universal selector. The universal selector works like a wildcard character and is used to match and apply a style to all the elements on a web page. We use an asterisk symbol to represent a universal selector. The style rules that are defined inside the selector will be applied to each element in the document. Example, font family, Arial. Using the universal selector, the typeface Arial will be applied to the text of the whole document. In the above code, the color and size effects are applied to all the elements present on the web page. Using type selector. The type selector or the element selector identifies an element based on its type, irrespective of how that element is declared within the HTML document, and then applies the effect on the element. Example, H1, curly braces in, font weight, colon, bold semicolon, font family, colon, Arial semicolon, color, colon, red semicolon, curly braces close. The above CSS rule will be applied to all the H1 elements that appear in the document so that the text enclosed between H1 and /H1 tags will be displayed as bold and the typeface will be Arial. Using class selector. A class selector lets you apply CSS styles for a group of HTML elements. Once the properties are defined, these properties can be applied to different HTML elements of the same type with a specific class. The class selector is defined by placing a dot symbol before a class name. Observe in the above code different HTML elements like H1 and P are using class selector. Therefore, the same effect, color :red, is applied to the elements on the web page. Using ID selector. In CSS, properties can be applied to individual elements using an ID selector.